One, two, three.
Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from our secret ice fortress and laboratory high in the Swiss Alps. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. Keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground as Sumo and Smokestack direct your attention to a higher dimension. Are you ready? Stand by.
Something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Battle lines being drawn, and nobody's right when everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their minds, getting so much resistance from behind. I think it's time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. What a field day for the heat. 1,000 people in the street, singing songs and carrying signs. And they mostly say, hooray for our sign. They think it's time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Paranoia strikes deep into your life. It will creep. Starts when you're always afraid. Step out of line, men are coming, take you away. I think it's time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. I think he wore a cowboy suit when he sang this song. Am I wrong on that?
I don't know. It's a great tune, though.
I think he did. It does a weird thing on the third verse, which is unusual for songs, where it changes the... You go... Because mostly it's just EA, but then on that one it's like EA, and then a G. This is a strange move. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. It turned into... 2 weeks and then get tested for AIDS.
Yeah.
So, science!
Science! Woo-woo!
Love science. Love science. Gives you AIDS, I guess. Who knows anymore? But yeah, see, I don't know if it's, I always don't know what parts of it are real.
Yeah.
But I remember for the longest time at the beginning of the magic spell, we used to talk about how in Wuhan, do you recall there used to be a place called Wuhan?
I do remember. They ate bats there.
They ate bats there, and then there was like a wet market or something,
Yeah.
And then there's like, no, we just made it from AIDS.
Right.
After a while.
They
that's what
literally
said.
did. They made it from AIDS, guys. They made it from AIDS.
Well, if it's real, but that's what they said. They were like, we made it
Yeah.
we took AIDS and then we added spikes on AIDS.
Yeah, that's what they did. I mean,
And then we made it airborne.
yeah.
And then we blamed it on a bat. But after we blamed it on a pangolin, which is an animal that was convenient because no one knew what that was.
We're being technically incorrect. I think they made it with the HIV spike protein. AIDS isn't a virus.
I mean, whichever.
Yeah.
None of
I'm
it's
just trying to be
real.
consistent with our...
I can make up anything and it'd be just as valid.
Good point.
And they took tuberculosis.
Yeah.
They took the tuberculosis triangle protein.
Right.
And they stuck it on the side of the Rubik's Cube. And that was COVID.
Well, if you read the say the Eco Health Alliance grants, the people that were doing the research paid for by the federal government, they really were like taking diseases and putting them together like some kind of Mr. Potato Head from hell.
Yeah, which I mean, I don't even blame them for doing that. That sounds fun.
And
like
also,
if I had a little bit of like cholera and I could like tag on, I don't know.
And multiple people from that research group have come out saying that Peter Daszak said that he was working for the CIA too.
Well, everyone's working for the CIA.
Well, at least everybody doing something retarded.
Yeah. If you're doing something weird, you're working for the CIA by definition.
Yeah,
really.
you might just be like subcontractor, not know it, but
yeah, I mean, we're probably working for the CIA for all we know.
yeah, probably.
Probably every single buy me a coffee is from a glowy.
It's all just Robert.
It's all just Robert going like, keep doing that one. Like he gives us money whenever we say something that is beneficial for them.
Robert's running a server farm to make it look like we have an audience, and he's just sending us money.
All of the Twitter accounts that follow us, all of the email, it's just Robert under various guises.
We're on to you, Robert.
It could be. But yeah, but at the beginning they were like, this is what we did. And then that was a conspiracy for a while.
Yep.
And then they dropped it and everyone quit talking about Wuhan. And now they're like, oh, the vaccine. We actually did make that using HIV though.
They made the vaccine using HIV?
Yeah, I saw this on the British Broadcasting the BBC.
Oh no.
They had a special, and there was a guy that was like, I guess it was real, I don't know, someone could have made it and put it together, but it's been floating around the verse. Where they're like, yeah, we used the protein from HIV to stick the spike protein from the corona into the amalgamation of the vaccine or something.
Oh no.
Like the guy was like, yeah, I used HIV to glue the spike onto the thing. And everyone's like, what? And now there's this weird op running where like they keep talking about HIV test kits and how everyone needs one. I think that's just people. I mean, I think people are really saying that, but I think that it's just, I don't think you have HIV, but they're trying to, it's some weird psyop going on.
Well, here's the thing. If you've got a bunch of people testing positive for HIV and thinking they're going to get AIDS because they got a vaccine, they may not be sick at all, but they'll go seek treatment and make a bunch of people money.
They'll get AZT and die.
Yeah. I think AZT's been pulled from the market.
They can bring it back.
But it's like, hey, let's get these people in the medical complex. Let's get them plugged up. We need more customers. I mean, there was an announcement. I think it was in like Denmark or something. I got the file on it. But it was about a new variant of HIV discovered in the Netherlands. Here it is. More aggressive
New
HIV
variant.
strain that leads to AIDS twice as fast, discovered in the Netherlands. So scary, so scary. So it is weird.
Stupid idea that there's even variants of viruses.
Well, that's the thing. Is like their variants might be real, but they're being used. The idea of a variant is just anytime you want to change the narrative, you just say there's a new variant. Like there's nobody's checking or proving any of this. They're just saying, new variant. And now they're doing it they're going to do it with HIV next. Like they're already signaling, there's going to be another HIV crisis now.
Yeah, there's a new variant of HIV, and well, the first HIV, that was just a psyop to get straight people to wear condoms. That's all that was.
Was it? Oh, well, it was effective.
Everything is just a depopulation agenda.
Yeah, maybe on some level.
That's all it is. Because used to teen pregnancy was like all the time.
Yeah.
Because straight people thought wearing condoms was weird. It is, parentheses. But then they were like, no, you got to do it or you'll catch AIDS. And everyone was like, oh, I don't want AIDS.
Right.
And so, as Delicious Tacos has said many times, it is impossible for a heterosexual couple to transmit diseases. Probably true. Who knows? This is medical. This show is medical advice, actually.
No, it's not. It's not medical advice.
It's also law advice.
No, we're not lawyers. No,
It's
no.
It's all the advice.
Probably. Are you blowing up the show again?
No, I'm just saying it. It'd be as good as I'm sure whatever you get from a professional.
Well, yeah.
I mean, like where I live, there's a guy who I guess he's a lawyer or something. He's an attorney of some kind, injury law or something, and he comes on the TV with someone like his commercials have someone in like a net cast.
Okay.
And then he steps around a corner with an AR-15 and sunglasses, and he says, "If you've been injured, call me right now." And then he just shoots at the screen. So, I don't know if what we would tell you would be any worse, is my point.
Yeah. I mean, maybe.
So, he's like, call me right now. Bah, 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 bah. He just like points a gun at you through the TV. As if he's threatening to shoot you if you don't call him, I guess.
I guess you better call him, man. That sounds serious.
And while this is happening, the guy in the neck brace is just smiling. Yeah, I called him. So.
Oh, lawyers.
I mean, I'm glad that they do stuff like that now, because they're just like ambulance chasing just full out in the open.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I'm a crazy guy that chases ambulances. And I wish doctors would be that honest too. Like, we're just here giving opium to dying people.
We're just pushing drugs so that you die in the most expensive way possible.
Yeah, you could die so much cheaper. You really could. It doesn't cost a lot to die, guys. I believe we are going to talk. Let's talk about some COVID reversals.
All right.
Because this has been fun. This has been fun. The past couple of weeks, they've been like, hey, you know that thing we all said was science? Now it's not science anymore.
No. It never was science. That didn't happen. And now everything is new all the time.
Everything is new. Every day wakes up and the universe is completely different.
Yes.
And science works in a different fashion.
Right.
I think there's one. We got some clips.
We do.
Let's play some clips. Just play me one at random and we'll talk about it.
Here we go. Here's a compilation.
Let's get that dynamic of the virus in the community low enough so that we can feel safe in pulling back on the requirement for children to wear masks.
That the entire community in a school feels safe and welcome. And I don't think that when you get to COVID, there's no risk. The real issue becomes, how do we make sure that everybody feels safe? So if we don't have a mask mandate in school, we got to make sure that kids and teachers are not stigmatized for wearing masks. And we better do everything we can to make sure the ventilation is working in classrooms.
Because we've had this sort of domino effect just in the last couple of days. You had Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut yesterday saying they're going to end the mask mandates in schools. Do you think that's a good idea?
Well, I think we have to be talking about the off-ramp for masks, and we asked for that conversation that's based upon science instead of politics back in November. Masks. No one wants masks in schools, not teachers, not students. But, it's time in this COVID pandemic to actually do a little bit of planning based upon science as opposed to just announcement by announcement.
But we've got 2 years of science now, so we know it made a lot of sense, obviously, early on to have masks on in schools. We didn't know how dangerous this was, how it was.
People's faces, to see smiles on their faces. I mean, kids need to be with one another unrestricted in schools. There's a reason why the World Health Organization has never recommended masking children under the age of 5. They are at the highest risk for learning loss. They have a hard time with language development, reading. Kids with special needs, with disabilities are particularly suffering. And I think it's really, really time to be intellectually honest about the lack of data. The norm is seeing faces, and the burden of proof is now on the intervention. The first goal of medicine and public health is do no harm.
I'm so glad that after years of disastrous policies that these normie politicians and talking heads are here to rescue us from their policies. Now that it's election season.
There's one particularly egregious one where that woman says the science changed.
Yeah, that's Lena Wen. So she's CNN's like medical expert now, and particularly snaky. And this is her talking about the science changing on masks. Here we go.
Do you agree with the move?
I do. There was and is a time and place for pandemic restrictions, but when they were put in, it was always with the understanding that they would be removed as soon as we can. And in this case, circumstances have changed. Case counts are declining. Also, the science has changed. We know that vaccines protect very well against Omicron, which is the dominant variant. Everyone 5 and older have widespread access to vaccines. And we also know about one-way masking, the idea that even if other people around you are not wearing masks, if you wear a high quality mask, that also protects you, the wearer, too. And so in this case, I don't think anyone really is saying that no one should ever wear masks, but rather that the responsibility should shift from a government mandate imposed from the state or the local district of the school. Rather, it should shift to an individual responsibility by the family, who can still decide that their child can wear a mask if needed.
Take New Jersey, the case in New Jersey, for instance. Their new case average is just over 4,000. Is that an acceptable number to do this, or are they projecting out to March 7th at this point?
I don't think we should be looking at case counts at all at this point, especially when we're dealing with a milder variant and when so many people were exposed to Omicron and therefore have at least some level of protection either through vaccination or immunity. The key number that we should be looking at is hospitalizations. If our ICUs and hospitals in that particular region are not overwhelmed, if they're not over capacity, we can set a number, for example, 75% or 80% full, then we should be able to relax all restrictions. And I actually believe that we should be starting to, with the first restriction removed, should actually be the restriction on children. Because while for adults, you could say, well, what's the harm of adults masking when they go into a grocery store? There actually is a harm that we should be discussing of children continuing to mask. That doesn't mean that masking doesn't have its place for children when there are very high rates of hospitalization. If we get a new variant in the future that children are particularly susceptible to, we may want to bring masks back. But we should also be intellectually honest and say that masking has had a cost, especially for the youngest learners, people with English as a second language, children with learning disabilities. There has been a cost to them. So the risk-benefit calculation has really changed.
Man, that is stunning.
I like how it was my favorite part is they were like, listen, the mask, because for so long they were like, wearing a mask is about protecting others.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're going to kill grandma, man, if you don't wear a mask.
And then they're like, no. Actually, wearing the mask protects you. See,
and even then, masking. The stupid paper masks and the cloth masks do nothing for anybody. And I remember having this argument with a friend of mine, like in early 2020, and I went back and I read papers that were published before COVID was the thing. And it was understood that for particulates and protecting your lungs and all that stuff, the only thing that does any good is a well-fitted, high quality, like an N95 or whatever. And it only does any good for the wearer. The effect of wearing it doesn't have any effect on anybody else. And that was right. Understood by everyone. That was accepted and settled. And then we dumped all of that out. We made up a new science, and now everybody has to wear like cloth junk on their face all the time and get all nasty and sweaty and breathy and dirty. And that's gonna save grandma. But no, and now we're back. Look, 2 years later, we're back to what everybody knew in the beginning of 2019 because it's election season. That is so disgusting.
Yeah, this is what it is. It's election season.
It's
they
exactly
roll it back
what
for
it is.
election season, then after elections, they'll roll it back again.
Because everybody hates it. Everybody hates masks. Nobody wants to wear them unless you're a deranged hypochondriac at this point, which there are a lot of them out there now. Sadly, their minds have been broken by this stuff. And they may never. I know people that may never recover.
And good.
I'm sad for them. I'm sad for them, but they're acting psychotic. Yeah, I mean it's hard. It's hard.
I've lost the ability to feel empathy. For now, just like when people are dying from their own ridiculousness.
Yeah.
I sort of just go good, which is bad.
Yeah.
But I understand. But it's understandable.
Right.
It's understandable. You know.
It's hard to watch people just be stuck in this stuff. Even though you can get, anybody can just get on Google Scholar and read papers. If you just go back before 2019 and read all this stuff, it's not complicated. It's actually it was settled a long time ago, especially with masks. I mean, this whole thing has been a giant joke.
Anything. Nothing means anything.
Yeah.
It's old.
And then Lena Wen saying that we shouldn't be looking at case counts.
Why are we listening to a Chinese woman?
Gosh. Oh, yeah, good point. No.
First of all, look, guys, this is an important point. Like in the Bible, if you think that matters, it says those led by women or foreigners are cursed.
There you go.
So why is anyone listening to a woman? You should be like people say that I'm. I don't know, but you definitely shouldn't listen to a woman, regardless of their race.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Like,
I saw somebody remark very wisely on Twitter that a sign of a declining power or irrelevance of a once powerful organization is that women are in charge of it.
It's true all the way across the board.
Yeah.
Because what happens is women move in and they start to do things, and then men that are competent say, move out.
Did you see that?
Why would you waste your time?
Did you see that the first female F-35 pilot crashed her F-35 on the aircraft carrier?
Right, and good.
Just like the female in the Navy, the ship captain in the Navy that crashed her ship.
Right, it could. Then we need to put women in charge of every large vehicle.
But I mean, what it does, it's like perfectly illustrates the declining power of the U.S. military. I mean, it's perfect. Right. All we can do is like drone bomb people. Nobody's afraid of the 27th Trainee Brigade. I'm sorry. Besides, they're all in sick bay with heart inflammation now. Like they're not going to fight anybody.
Right. If we were to fight Russia would win.
Right. All our people be having heart attacks.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't think that we're gonna fight Russia again, but maybe Putin gets up there and he talks a big game.
Well, speaking of that, I've got the most epic. This is about a week old, I think, but it's so incredible. And if you haven't, it didn't get much press, but a journalist, I think he's with AP, Matt Lee, went after the State Department nerd for. Well, you'll just have to listen to it. The State Department nerd is claiming that they have evidence that Russia is going to release a false flag video.
Let's me and you reenact this. You want to be the journalist or the guy at the podium?
I'll be the guy at the podium.
Okay. So what it was, this is like Smokestack is going to be a guy apparently representing the U.S. government.
Yeah, he's State Department, press relations guy.
All right, let's go.
And furthermore, we actually have information that indicates that the Russians are planning to provoke a conflict by staging some sort of atrocity or false flag using actors.
Excuse me. This is sort of what you just said, that Russia's going to stage a false flag using crisis. I mean, this is like Alex Jones territory. Do you have any evidence for this?
Well, I just gave it to you. We have information that indicates that they are going to do this. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, but what is like the evidence that you have though?
Well, I just told you we have information. We have declassified information.
I can't even do it without laughing. It's so stupid. He kept saying, "I just told you."
Yeah.
Like, but what's the evidence? It's like just him saying it was the evidence.
Right. Like the evidence
like,
just comes out of his mouth.
He had.
Yeah.
He's like, "Do you have anything else?" And he's like, "I just gave it to you."
I'm sorry you don't like the format, Matt. I'm sorry you don't like the format, but we have to protect our sources, and I just gave you the evidence. So. If you take comfort in Russian disinformation, then you can question it all you want.
Yeah, it was great. That should be all of our. Because it's out in the open now. That's always what American foreign policy has been. There was never any evidence for anything ever.
Yeah, well, like every war that we've been in since, I don't know, World War II was started on a false flag premise. I mean,
I love that they admit that false flags are real things that governments do, though. That's good.
Yeah.
That's a positive advantage that we've wormed into the lexicon.
Right.
False flag and crisis actor.
I mean, yeah, those were forbidden words up until that State Department dork started talking about them.
Yeah, he was like, no, people do that for sure. And, well, I sent you the clip of the guy from the U.S. being like, listen, sometimes submarines go down, sometimes they don't come back up, wink, wink.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that guy was basically...
They've been doing this... Of course you do a false... I mean, the Princess Bride movie had as its core thing a false flag.
Yeah.
A literal false flag. Like, we're going to capture the princess, put him on a horse from Gilder with literally a piece of her red dress on it, a red flag, and then run the horse back, and that'll be how we start a war.
Yeah.
People have had this idea for ages. It's not difficult.
Yeah.
But people are like, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. No, you just pretend something bad happened, and then you can have an excuse to do a war that you wanted.
Yeah.
That's what every war has been. It's all just Colin Powell with a vial of sugar screaming at senators.
Yeah, I mean, look up Operation Northwoods. They were planned. They didn't execute it, but there are detailed plans about basically flying a drone aircraft at Cuba to provoke them to shoot it down and start a war, or to shoot it down to make it look like they shot it down and then start a war with Cuba during the Cuban Missile.
That's how Vietnam was started. We sank our own boats. We shot at some things, and then we said, aha, see, it's the Viet Cong, and then we just...
Oh, yeah, the whole Gulf of Tonkin incident, they were just shooting into the dark. I mean, there was no evidence that there was any attack whatsoever on the U.S. vessel.
Well, there was. I just told it to you.
Right. I'm sorry you don't like the format, Matt.
Sorry I don't like the format, but there was evidence. It's like, what's the evidence? I just gave it to you.
No, Matt Lee from I think he's from AP.
That was legitimately insane.
He totally shredded the guy.
That guy up there that was like, "Where's the evidence?" And he's like, "I just gave it to you." Like, and then he's like, "But what is? I'm telling you the evidence right now.
Yeah,
we know that it's gonna happen."
And it went on for like 5 minutes. I mean, they went back and forth like that. And he accused Matt Lee of being basically in bed with the Russians for demanding evidence. Oh, it was outrageous. I won't play the clip. It's like 5 minutes long, but you've got to just do yourself a favor and look that up to see. This is what a failed state looks like. Like, this is Baghdad Bob right before the fall of Baghdad, saying, no, everything is good. We are in control of Baghdad. Saddam Hussein is feeling great. Everything is fine. Like, things are like blowing up behind him,
Yes. Okay. Now, today, my friends, a lot of people are going to be mad at me.
Oh, boy.
A lot of people are going to be mad at me because I'm going to step on some sacred cows.
Uh-oh.
Now, I may inadvertently call a lot of our listeners stupid.
You do that anyway. You do that all the time.
I'm going to do it in a nice way.
Okay.
But you were talking about how we needed show transitions.
Yeah.
Instead of abrupt things. Mm-hmm. So, you ready?
Okay.
Show transition. Okay. So, do you remember somebody called David Hogg?
Yeah. He was one of the. Which school shooting was he in or whatever?
Allegedly in the Parkland school.
Parkland, yeah, and he became like this nerd anti-gun activist who nobody takes seriously anymore.
Right, so allegedly, and this may have happened, I don't know, but allegedly there was a kid named Nicholas Cruz who shot up a school in Parkland, Florida.
Right, yep.
And I don't know if they faked the whole thing. I don't know if they put him up to it and some spook put Nicholas Cruz up to it and he really did.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if somewhere in the bowels of the CIA they have an actual crystal ball and can see the future. But I do know that the permits for the protest that David Hogg held in D.C. for this shooting, week after the shooting, so, were filed 6 to 7 months in advance.
Holy cow!
That's what I do know.
Whoa! Right? What?
Now,
are you serious?
Of course that's true, because you can't just do a protest and shut down the middle of D.C. without a permit. That doesn't work. And you can't just do that, right? And I'm trying to get people to think for a minute. We also know a high schooler can't just put together a march of like 100,000 people on a whim in a week.
True.
Doesn't work. High schoolers just like to undress themselves on TikTok and play Fortnite. They're not going to do like mass effective political activism.
No, they're not.
Now, again, I'm working from memory here. Some of the details of what I just said may be incorrect. Like someone's going to be like, actually, it was 9 days, not a week, or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The gestalt of what I'm saying is correct. Okay. So, the point is, after Parkland, whatever really happened there, and I don't want to discuss whether or not Parkland was real. Some of it was, some of it wasn't. But whatever happened, the system, Babylon, the Matrix, the not milk reality, whatever you want to call it, was primed and ready to go. And they had their boy, David Hogg. They gave him everything lined up on a silver platter.
Yep.
Just ready. Because he was like 17 at the time, right?
Uh-huh.
Maybe 18.
Yeah.
And if you look him up on the Wikipedias, it will tell you that he rose to prominence after the shooting because he helped lead several high-profile boycotts, protests, and marches, which is true. He did lead them in so much as that he was like at the front of the march.
Right.
What is obviously not true, however, what didn't happen, is that David Hogg didn't organize any of this. A 17-year-old did not go through the thing of getting the permits. He didn't fund all of the media outreach to get all the people there.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't cross-platform all of the advertisements for it.
Yep.
He didn't. None of that was him. He didn't get all the porta potties out. He didn't have the banners made. He didn't do any of that. Not what a 17-year-old does. You ever try to plan a party with like 10 people?
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen to get 10 people together.
Yeah.
Right? And so, okay, anyone that's ever tried to do any organization of anything political at all, a march or a rally or something, it takes like a lot of work. It doesn't just happen overnight, right? Now, it is true that almost everybody that attended David Hogg's rallies wasn't quote-unquote in on it.
Yeah.
They saw people ask for volunteers. They saw him get on Facebook and say, come join me in the march. And they're like, yeah, that sounds fun. Let's go to Washington and we'll take some cool selfies in the streets and woo! Right? And that's how these things work. They're like honeypots, right? So, but someone or some organization, more likely, because it takes many people, organizes, promotes, advertises, schedules, gets the permits, handles the parking, handles all of those things that need to be handled.
Okay.
And then lots of normies come in and fill out the rank and file, pretending that it's organic. In their minds, we all just showed up and went, woo! But someone had to lay this out. You can't just, you, listener, try to go on Facebook right now and get 10 people to show up at a rally for something. Doesn't matter what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Get on there and be like, hey, I want to rally against, I don't know, lesbians cooking fast food.
Yeah.
And you have a banner made up and you start screaming it and see if anybody shows up.
So
it's very difficult to get this to happen. He also didn't David Hogg, at 17, did not write a book called #Never Again, A New Generation Draws the Line that became a New York Times bestseller. He just didn't.
Yeah.
His name is on it. But I promise you, because one, writing is hard. Writing a full coherent book is beyond the ability of 99% of the population, let alone at 17. Writing one quickly to get it out there. I mean, look, the Parkland thing happened on February 14th, 2018. And this book was published, not written, but published and available for purchase on June 19th of same year, 4 months.
Not possible.
Not possible. Someone ghost writ it for him. They ghost wrote it for him. Right? And they said, like, oh, he and his sister, who was like 13 at the time, wrote it together.
Yeah.
Total
crap.
No, some organization funded a ghostwriter. They had all of this ready to go. Right? They had all of it teed up and ready to go. And everyone was like, woo, gun violence, this is all organic. This is a grassroots movement. And they went and they pretended and they thought it was. And a lot of people never caught on to that. You know what 17-year-olds also don't do by themselves? Start a quote-unquote student-led, which is crap. It never is. High school students don't do anything. A student-led political action group called Never Again MSD. That has chapters around the country and has rallies in various cities. That's not something that that's something someone with a lot of money makes happen.
Absolutely.
Right? That's something, because that's expensive. Okay? So it didn't, none of that was real. It didn't happen. They're being used, and good for them. Hooray. They got picked to be part of some weird not milk movement they wanted to promote, and they're getting money and fame from it. Great. Right? If one day maybe the not milk reality will choose me to be the face of some evil thing.
No, don't do it.
And I will stand up there and tell you that we have to ban all hairless cats or something to save America.
Okay.
And the climate change. Because they make too much carbon.
Right.
All cows have to be killed. And then the show will be very profitable all of a sudden.
Yeah.
That would be, that'd be awesome. But okay, but for a moment, just guys, please get this in your heads. This is important. There's really no such thing as this grassroots or organic movement that happens quickly. It doesn't. Or organic movement, like a counterculture, can grow over like the span of 20 years. But it doesn't just spring into existence with all this stuff. No, how many times does Lucy have to pull the football away before people start getting it? Right? Now, with that in mind, and I know this means a lot to people. I know they're going to be upset. I know there's a lot of emotion involved. It's okay. I love you anyway. But think about the quote-unquote trucker protest in Canada. Right?
Okay.
I don't want to be a wet blanket here. I'm sorry. It's very important we learn to examine everything critically and not be carried away by our emotions for something we want to happen. So maybe I'm wrong. And this one here is totally organic and not funded or organized in any way by nefarious forces. It's possible. I doubt it, but it's possible. Okay. But even if I'm wrong here, it's still very important that we just learn as a skill to not get easily carried away into belief because we want it to happen because of emotion.
I think that
for like
is
2 years. I get it.
That's very important. You're right.
For like 2 years, we've been desperate for anything to happen. Like, yeah, come on, some significant measure of resistance to the global biosecurity state, right? And so when it seems to happen, everyone's just so happy. Finally! That very emotion is the thing they can use to get you, trick you.
Yeah.
And I think purposely there are some very suspicious things about this protest and how it came about and how it continues that we need to consider. But do you guys remember Chaz?
I do. I remember the Chaz, yeah.
The Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone? Was that in Seattle, right?
Yeah. Or Portland, Seattle.
Or one of them. Who knows? They're the same thing. Was that organic?
No.
Exactly. Now, leftists who wanted that sort of thing really believed it was organic because they wanted that to happen. They've been desperate for like a communist uprising taking over the thing. They wanted it so bad. But that could only happen with a lot of backdoor funding, a lot of people in government allowing it to happen, a lot of people turning a blind eye to the various crimes being committed while it was happening, right?
Yeah.
A lot of organization, and people on the right can see through that deception because they didn't personally want it to happen. But people on the left loved it, and they couldn't. They thought it was all real, and they get mad at you but it wasn't. It wasn't real. They thought it was a true frustration of like the oppressed class, right, being manifested in real time. But that was never ever true.
Right.
Okay. So what I'm just suggesting is that maybe, in like manner, the right is now being played with regard to trucker protest, so-called, because there aren't even a lot of truckers there.
Yeah, that's true. There's not. I think there's maybe a few hundred trucks between Ottawa and the border, the couple of border crossings, and there are some fishy. Now, I'll just say that I'm not convinced that this thing is being staged managed.
Yeah, I know.
I think maybe there are some shady things going on, however, for which I will cop to. One is the constant conflicting reports about the openness or closedness of the border crossings. The local press, from what I've seen, the local press has been reporting that the border crossings are open and that trucks are getting through, which is actually very important for the vehicle manufacturing in the Midwest, because most of the auto parts that all the cars are made from in the Midwest are produced in Canada. And then they just bring the parts down. So if the border closes for like even a day,
Canada for anything.
Right? I mean, if the border is closed for even a day, that could shut down entire giant manufacturing lines. I mean, just because just-in-time inventories and all that stuff, the way those factories run, it would be serious problems for the automotive industry. But people are saying that the border is closed, and the other people are saying it's open, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of noise. I'm seeing like the Ford people coming out and saying, "Oh, it's very, it's very important that we keep that thing open," but they're not. I haven't seen anyone come out and say officially from the automotive industry that their supplies have been interrupted because of the protests. Now, their supplies have been interrupted for other reasons for the past 2 years, but it's not conclusive to me that the borders are closed.
I agree, and you find conflicting news reports about it. Like, is it closed? I'm like, it's closed because of the. And they're like, no, it's fine. So
also,
what's happening?
Well, also
nobody really knows.
There are videos of people carrying gas cans, to the truckers to fuel them up. But if you watch a lot of those videos, I hate to say it, but the cans are empty.
Exactly. You picked up on that, and it was because think about it. Just think about this is why people that aren't. This is why people that do not, the more detached you are from material reality, more easily you can be psyoped. Because someone that spent a lot of time outside, or that like worked out, or was used to carrying things, or did stuff with their hands, would recognize that a 5-gallon gas tank weighs a fair amount, like 60, 70 pounds.
10 gas is like 7-ish pounds per gallon. So if there are the videos of women carrying what should be about 70 pounds of gasoline, just walking down the street swinging them like it's no big deal. And you can tell, and they even clank together, and they're empty. They're just the way they're moving. Their shoulders aren't pulled down.
They're like walking in a protest. So this video is presented to you as though this is how the truckers are getting gas, because that's a big question.
Right.
Like, how are they getting all this gas?
Now those guys, that particular crowd might have been trolling the police, because around the same time it was deemed a city ordinance was passed that it's illegal to bring gas to the truckers. Which, okay, maybe they are trolling, but it's sort of weird that that video is being put out there like, oh, all these brave people are standing up and bringing gas to these guys,
right?
And they're carrying empty cans. That did strike me as a little funny. Now, however, there have been trucker protests already. Like, there have been different sorts of trucker protests all over the world. I mean, look at the yellow vests in France. Were doing that stuff related to immigration. There have been after the fake election, there were some trucker protests where truckers would just show up and block traffic for a few hours. So this isn't like a new tactic, though. And I think I'm just in defense of whatever realness is going on here. I don't think this would be as hard to organize because truckers have developed their own self-organizing networks.
They have, but here's my big thing. Now, the gas can thing is important because they hold. Because if the people are, why would you do that? If you have the gas cans and the truckers need gas, why wouldn't you go actually get gas and bring it to them?
Yes, true. Yeah.
Why would you have a video of like a bunch of you marching and then these women are like, so they're walking, they got like a 35-pound gas can in each hand or whatever. And then they will just hold up their hand like they're going, yeah! Like this woman just side lateral raised the 35 pounds like it was nothing. Yeah. And most women can't do that.
Yeah, they can't.
But like doing a straight arm raise out to the side without bending your elbow at all of 35 pounds is not easy.
No, it's not.
Like there's some strain, and you definitely can't do it quickly and be like, yeah, and shake it around. Clearly empty gas.
Yeah, the gas cans in the videos, or at least some of the videos, are empty. Like that's irrefutable as far as I'm concerned.
I agree.
But
so that's.
But at the same time, how much I'm having a little trouble with your idea that this couldn't have happened without a lot of assets on the ground, because these guys are owner operators. They own their own rigs. They fuel them up. They drive them down there. I just don't, there were no permits pulled. There are some porta potties down there, but I don't think it's unreasonable that one of the guys involved in the protest owns a porta potty company. And just brought a few of his own, because like you said, there's not actually that many trucks down there. There might be 50 to 60 trucks in downtown Ottawa from what I can see. And
and we mean like large semi trucks, not like pickups.
Yeah, like big rigs.
The big rigs. Now there's a lot of people there, but there aren't a lot of truckers.
Right.
There's maybe like 100 people with a semi.
Yeah. It's not huge, and I think it could. Like that, I think that was not a big order as far as a self-organizing protest, especially for truckers who are a self-organizing tight-knit subculture that has done things like this before. So
that's one of the points I want to point out. The tight-knitness of the trucker. So one thing that's suspicious to me is that this is a so-called trucker protest, and everyone there is white. I'm not being like racist or anything. It's just it's a anomaly, because in Canada the majority of truckers are not white. They're Indians and Sikhs, but it's like 65%.
Yeah.
So the trucker community is not there.
Right.
The actual truckers, right? The actual people that are doing the truck. There's actually not that many white Canadian truck drivers anymore.
Right.
They just don't do that. It's just like if you were a white person, you're like, I run a convenience store. People are like, what?
Okay.
You're turban. Like in America, almost like so many of the convenience stores are run by an Indian fellow.
So now,
similar thing with trucking in Canada.
Now, contrary to that, I have seen video of Sikhs at the protests.
Yes, there's one or two.
I mean, there are some there. So just,
there's one or two.
But yeah, I will agree with you that is mostly a white crowd.
Mostly a white crowd. Yeah. It's mostly the people that they want to villainize who happen to have been lured there, I think. But maybe they can be wrong. Right. Okay, another piece is that there was a this was an email from a guy named Mike who was talking with Quantum of Conscience. He went to the rallies early last week, and he was talking about, he's like, I felt great. Like, it felt like electric. It was like, every day I've been there, it was like, yeah, freedom, and we feel great, and I'm so happy to be around freedom-loving people. And then he said, but something does feel a little weird. I gotta admit. He goes, one thing, right at the beginning when all this started, there was a boom truck, which a boom truck is like a semi, but it's got, instead of a trailer on the back, it's got like a big crane
Like
arm.
a cherry picker kind of thing.
Like a big cherry. There was one of those parked like right on the grass in front of Parliament. Just, he's like, and that's weird because the boom trucks aren't affected by any of this mandate stuff. One. But it also was just right there with like its crane arm up in front of Parliament. And people use that parked truck. He's like, I don't see anyone actually in it, like owning it. Hang off Canadian flag off the boom and write, like F Trudeau over it and stuff. And he said, and interestingly, the F Trudeau is now professionally painted. Like someone had a stencil. Mm-hmm. Someone had the letters are very neat. It's not just spray canned on there. The whole thing, there's like a maple leaf thing. He's like, that seems a bit weird. Like, where'd people get this big stencil? Professionally paint the side of this truck. And he goes, and then for that matter, where did all these F Trudeau flags come from all of a sudden? Now, some people probably had those beforehand, but like, did a lot of people? Did this many people?
I mean, there's a Let's Go Brandon flag in somebody's yard where I live, so I mean, they're out there.
That's been months in the making.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They've had months of like, if you try to order a custom flag, and I have done this, it takes like a month or so to arrive. They have to make
and it shows up with creases in it. You have to iron out.
It shows up with creases in it. It shows up because it's been folded and you put in a package. And these don't look like that. Where did they come from? Who's professionally painting these signs? Who put that boom truck there? Another one, a big one to me, and this is one Matt brought up too. At one point during the protest, there is a helicopter flying over the Parliament building, like right over it, and it's got F. Trudeau like written on the bottom of it. Now, some people have tried to claim that this was actually some news organization. And that's why they could do it, because they had a permit. But no, I don't, because the news organization wouldn't write that on the bottom of their helicopter in like red paint. And also, like, there's no country in the world that takes kindly to people flying over to violating the airspace directly over their Capitol buildings.
Yeah.
That doesn't, like, in America, I think it's 50 miles. You need clearance to get within 50 miles.
It's huge.
Probably more. Right? And if you don't, like, if you were to fly a plane through the airspace of D.C. without clearance, like, jets would get scrambled.
Yeah.
Because you might fly it into the White House or the Congress. Like, it's a problem. I don't think anyone's going to like, the question is, was Trudeau actually in that helicopter? like
weirder
really,
things have happened.
That's highly, I seriously doubt that now other people have countered and said, well, someone just did it. And they just did it, and they got up there, and they didn't want to shoot it down over a bunch of people because that would be a problem. And so it was like, okay, yeah, maybe, but I guarantee you there would have been like a police helicopter or a military helicopter that came and hovered beside it and was like, get out now.
I think it could be. I think it could be argued.
Followed it, and then that person would have been arrested as soon as he touched the ground.
Well, I think you could probably argue that the police and the Canadian military are incapable of dealing with this. Like, I think we should not imagine that Canada has the same police capabilities that American major cities do. Because I think they're right. The Ottawa riot team is probably like 20 guys.
Well, that's true, but again, this is like the capital, and they do have like an Air Force. Now, I grant you, Canadians are dumb. And they might not be able to fly anything. Right. I mean, right? couldn't it just be that they're get at the controls paralyzed? Of the helicopter, and they're like, "What's this about? There's no maple syrup, right? And then there's no mousse, and they don't know what to do. That could be possible."
Well, also, I could imagine them for a time being paralyzed because they're a bunch of metropolitan liberal coward weenie soy boys. Like the whole government is that. And they're not used to people confronting them, and they hate confrontation, and don't know how to handle it. And so I could imagine when this thing kicked off, like Trudeau literally like said he had COVID and ran for the hills. He went and hid in the woods in a cabin. I mean,
True.
that's the mentality of these people. It's not just Trudeau, it's all of them. The people that are running this regime of biomedical tyranny are a bunch of nasty low T cowards. Okay. And so when confronted directly by, burly trucker dudes all over town honking their horns, they literally run away.
It's only like 100 people.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They would run away from less than that. They would run away from like 10 people pounding on the door of the Capitol. They're like heloed out of there. They're depraved cowards. So I think maybe we should consider that for a time the government is just reeling at being confronted like this, and like retired to their fainting couches for a little while to figure out what to do. But if that is the case, I imagine that they're going to pull themselves together and mount some sort of response in the very near future. Like they're not going to stay on the fainting couch forever. Yeah.
Right. So maybe another couple of suspicious things to me is that apparently, last I looked, and it may have changed, we're recording this on 2/10. So if it changes between
Thursday, February 10th.
Right. Last I looked, the so-called organizers of the protest, if they are, that's who they are, like the truckers that started it, are still on Twitter preaching their message. Now, Twitter will ban you for much less than that. Why are these people still allowed on Twitter?
They banned a sitting president.
Why is these people ostensibly leading a revolt against Justin Trudeau allowed to broadcast their message over the internet and using one of the platforms of the enemy, so-called? That seems suspicious.
It does. I would expect them to be banned.
Right? Now, some of their stuff was banned, but see, this is not them, though, I think, is the difference. Some people started a GoFundMe for the truckers. Yeah. And that was banned. Yeah. After they raised like $1 million something.
No.
And then the dummies started another one on GoFundMe. And raised like $55 million, and then that one was also banned. Yep. And then they started on like Give, Send, Go, or whatever that stupid one is.
Well, they haven't banned them, so,
The alternative. Right, but they're not. I think all that's going to do is the same thing as what happened with all the BLM donations. It just goes to one or two people buying a yacht somewhere later.
Right, yeah. The BLM people totally stole all that money.
Right, and good. Yeah. Congratulations. Good job. I wish we could learn from them how to steal money from our listeners.
People went to go to the BLM headquarters to find these people and ask what was done with the money, and the headquarters are empty. And everybody's gone. Yeah.
Because nothing was ever going to happen. Because it was all a big pep rally is what the BLM things were. It was just a big party.
Well, they could start, they could use that money to start a political party after the protest is over. The trucker party.
Then they decided no. The BLM decided not.
Well, yeah, BLM did.
Decided just to keep.
I'm just saying. Like, I'm just wondering what's going to become of this $5.8 million or whatever they've raised so far. Like, where is it going to go?
Because conservatives in America stop getting fleeced by grifters online is impossible. Yeah. It can't happen. People say, I'm gonna make the elections good. Give me money. People are like, yes, slay queen. Here's some money. And then she just disappears.
Well, I think the money was supposed to be to pay for the expenses of the families of the truck drivers that are participating, because they're basically giving up their livelihood to do this thing.
Right.
But I don't know, how that money's being distributed.
Right. Who is this person organizing it, if not the people themselves, the truckers themselves? How are they going to get it to these guys? How is any of that going to happen? They don't. As far as I can tell, it was started by some random supporters of it. who I think they're just grift and good job. We need to grift like that.
I mean, and you know, in your defense, like we need to remember that both the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys were run by federal informants.
Right. Everyone you think like because.
So I get where you're coming from here. I really do.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm just saying we need to think about because I don't want you guys to fall to. I don't want you guys to be caught up in a January 6th or this or something similar.
Well, speaking of the January 6th thing, I saw a very interesting video from downtown Ottawa where a truck driver and he showed us a picture of the guy. He said that there was a guy running around trying to get people to storm the Ottawa Capitol building. And he took pictures of him, and he's like, yeah, and he even had a little microphone in his scarf that kind of came out, and I could see like he was wearing a microphone, and he was literally trying to entice. So there are feds there. They are trying to do bad stuff, and what I think I'm going to take like a little bit more moderate position on this than you are. So what I think is going on is that the protest itself, like the presence of the truckers, was mostly spontaneous organization, and people showed up to support them. And like the guy that was on Quantum of Conscience, like he just showed up. He wasn't a Fed. He just wanted to support the movement because
just like they did with David Hobbs.
Because here's the thing, it's good to want to stand up to this. Like the impulse to stand up and say no more of this tyranny, that's a good impulse. And like people should be finding a way to stand up to it one way or another. Whether or not this is the correct way is an open question, but set that aside for a second. I think that it could be that this is spontaneously organized. However, things like the boom truck, things like the flags, like the guy trying to organize people to storm the Capitol. What's happening there is probably feds and spooks coming in like they always do and putting the marketing package on this thing, right? Just distributing the signs, hanging up the F Trudeau flags, all that stuff, because they're trying to precipitate something to discredit the whole thing, like January 6th. So the presence of all those people in the Capitol was not a psyop. Like they were coming to see Trump speak. They were angry because the election had obviously been stolen. They were there to protest that, you know, that was real. What the fake part of it was they were enticed into storming the Capitol. And the guy in this interview, I think even mentioned January 6th. He's like, we're not going to get trapped like that. We're not doing any violence. We're not doing any vandalism or property destruction. We're just sitting in our trucks, honking horns. That's all we're doing. And that's part of our charter rights to peaceably assemble and protest. And we're not doing anything illegal. And he was very careful to say, like, we're not going to be tricked into doing something that is going to end up in a January 6th scenario, because that was obviously a trap for those people and they fell into it. So this guy seemed to know what's up. And I don't know if the spooks and the feds are going to be successful in January 6ing these guys, but they are definitely there and they are definitely trying. It'll be interesting to see how it pans out.
Well, to that guy's point, like, good, but you're already doing something that they can, like, arrest you for.
Yeah, I mean, like, maybe.
Because, like, but people, I'm just saying, let's be clear-pilled for a second. All the people complaining about the BLM protests and how, like, they were blocking the streets, and what about ambulances? Same thing. Right? You're causing... There's a reason that you're supposed to, like, get permits to protest it so that people know and they can route, like, essential services around you. And you can't just...
But those would never have been granted.
Well, no, they would have been granted. You could... People, this is the thing. People think that the thing doesn't work, but you can protest. Okay. Right? But you can't... I'm just saying they already... Like, the idea that this guy's like, well, I'm just sitting here shutting down a city... That's not cause for anything to be done to me is not true.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with that.
Because
they are basically disrupting. They've kind of shut down the main functions of government there.
Right. And so you can protest in Canada just like in America, but like just like with the BLM riots, you can't just sit outside someone's house and scream at them and say I'm protesting, like with a big mob. I mean, you can, but you get in trouble.
Well, BLM didn't get in trouble, but they should have.
Well, a lot of them did though. People think but some of them they wasn't publicized, but a lot of them were in trouble.
Oh, good.
For that. Yeah, right. So the first thing, and this is the thing. So the first obstacle, I think, to get out of the way is this: there is no right and there is no left. It's a false binary.
Okay.
Because see, a lot of people, a lot of our listeners can be led to believe. I think, again, I'm just devil's advocate here. This trucker thing is real. Maybe it is. Again, I grant you, maybe it is. Because our listeners believe, quote unquote, the left controls the government and is always working to squash the quote unquote right, and therefore a leftist protest could and would be sanctioned by the government, but a rightist one would never be and therefore must be organic. But that is not true. Right? That's an obstacle. It's the right left is a false binary. It's made up. It's fake and it exists to control your mind. For example, who was the most communist United States president that's ever existed? Donald Trump, by a mile. It's never, I mean, seriously, he did more centralization of the government and the economy than anyone has ever done before ever. All of the stimulus packages and all of the COVID stuff that happened, and everyone cheered it on, but that was just straight communism. Right? There's no right, there's no left.
He was literally just giving everybody $2,000 or whatever it was. Yeah.
Right. The right and the left they're on the same. There's only up and down, really. There's ascending and descending, God and Satan. Right and left are on the same plane. Or, for example, is what is happening now in Ottawa, is that left or right? Well, if it is what it proclaims to be, a trucker protest, then it is a workers' revolution. Oh,
well,
it's a blue-collar people. It's a labor
but they're not trying to establish a communist regime. They're just trying to get people to leave them alone and not make them take injections that they don't want.
Well,
which I think is the leave me alone is a right position.
It's the leave me alone is the right position, but a lot of the people doing the first communisms didn't know they were doing that. They were there for some other reason, and then people were like, yeah. See, this is a workers' movement, and then Lenin and Stalin.
Well, I mean, I could see it as like a Reichstag fire sort of scenario where the truckers don't want the communism, full totalitarian communism, but it happens as a response to the truckers. Like say they stage some atrocity and blame it on the truckers or whatever, and then that is the pretext for.
You don't even have to stage an atrocity. This is one of the proposed reasons I think it may be a psyop, is because supply chains are disrupted and breaking down anyway, and hey, look, the truckers did it. Now we have to nationalize the trucking service and the supply chain industry because the truckers are untrustworthy and they may do it again. So the National Guard, the military of Canada could easily just say, oh, we're now doing the trucking.
if that happens, if trucking in Canada or the U.S. or both is nationalized after this, if there is some sort of massive supply chain collapse and there's, people are really, I mean, it's been collapsing. It is like slowly falling apart, it seems. I mean, I'm dealing with that every day in my professional life, but it would have to be something bigger than that to really sell this concept.
I agree.
But if it does happen and the truckers are blamed for it, then I would imagine I would see you as fully vindicated in your stance here.
Right. Well, that's just one possible reason they may be doing this. That's a more prosaic reason. I have a more interesting reason. But yeah, okay. So let's just say that's what's happening. Okay. So the left-right binary is made up. It's not. That's not what it is. I
mean, I generally agree.
Who's the most racist people in America? It's all the leftists. Like, racism isn't a right-wing thing. They believe that black people need all special help because they can't do it on their own, and that white people have this white savior complex. Yeah. It's all just extremely racism, right? But people think that that's a right-wing thing But it's all just narratives and people perception. Okay. So they definitely could and would do this for various reasons on the right. Because listen, bear with me, mind control, right? There's nothing fancy about it. Not an esoteric or mystical thing. You thinking that it's some guy with like a spinning wheel and like, ooh, abracadabra. That is ironically another psyop. Because all mind control is controlling what you think. That's it. And how do you control what people think? By controlling what information they have access to.
Yeah.
That's all. Right? For example, again, there were no WMDs. Everyone knows that now. But at the time, Colin Powell got up in front of Congress with a vial of white power and shook it screaming. And I don't think, if I recall, he even claimed that what he was holding was anything dangerous.
No, it was just a little performance. Yeah.
He just had a vial of white stuff in his hand while talking about WMDs and terrorism. And he didn't need to claim that that's what he had or that this came from Iraq or anything. It was just a visual of a vial, like, ooh, medical, dangerous drugs with white powder that's like, ooh, cocaine, anthrax, but it could have just been sugar for all we know. It could have been flour. We really have no idea what he had. But the visual combined with the words WMD and threats and terrorists that controlled the minds of the public, literally, into making them think that was a problem. They controlled what people think, mind control, and that we needed to go start a war in Iraq for 20 years.
Yeah, that's the thing. Domestic Americans were never in any danger from Iraq.
Right.
Never.
Or even from Muslims. Like, there was the whole 20 years, there were like 2 or 3 people that did something.
Yeah.
And most of them were, and like the brothers that shot up Boston, was it?
The Tsarnaev brothers set off that bomb.
The Boston Marathon. They were also FBI controlled. They don't even hide that. They were like assets that went bad.
Yeah.
So, if it wasn't for the FBI, arguably none of it would have happened.
It does seem like every terrorist attack, you find out much later that they had prior contact with the FBI and they, were informants or something like that. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So all of that was made up, and it was just mind control. It's all it is. All mind control is. It's not fancy. It's controlling what you believe and think. You do that by controlling the visual, audio input to people. Like, you give them scenes. You pretend it's real. You give them false information. Then they don't know what to think, and they make wrong decisions. Decisions that are, hopefully, if you're the mind controller, beneficial to you. Right? Because what people think is the most important resource on the planet. Way more than oil. Because if you get people to believe what you want, you win. You can make them do whatever. And they'll do it of their own free will. They will act in your interest of their own free will. And that's very powerful. It's a literal money printing machine.
Yep. Pfizer made $80 billion off of COVID. $80 billion.
Which was not a threat to almost everybody. Like 99% of the world was not in any danger at all.
Yeah, I got it. It was a flu-ish. I mean, that was it.
Right.
No big deal.
And so human minds are a greater commodity than oil or gold. And you listeners, believe me, there are people trying to acquire them. And your mind is one of the ones they want to acquire. So, and look, if you want to go along with the narratives, go ahead. It's fine. No one here will be mad at you. Generally speaking, it's usually not that bad for you. You can have a very decent life inside the Matrix. A lot of people do and prefer it. Just like in the movies. But, just like we talked about on the show on human farming, just as they told you in the Matrix movies, the price is that you are milked. You are farmed. Your energy, your money, your emotion is sucked up, a little to feed the beast.
Yeah.
Not too much. Farmer doesn't bleed his cows dry because he's got to use them again tomorrow. Just take some of your time, energy, resources that could rightfully go to the cow's offspring, right, and use it for himself. And that's all mind control is, and that's why the world runs on it. And all of us have been propagandized from the time we were little to believe things that are beneficial to other people. Not necessarily to you. In fact, they're often detrimental to you. That continues every day, all the time. It's the currency of the world. right? And so one of the things I hope this show can do for people is like, wake up. Like, wake up. Think this is real. Come on, wake up. Now, like, some things are real, but the default position in your mind, you should train yourself is like, if it's on a TV screen or coming through the screen, it's fake by default. And they has to prove to me that it's real.
Yeah.
Don't just believe, like, it's fake by default. Prove to me that it's real, right? Okay. So, if the trucker protest is not genuine, why? It has nefarious origins. What would be the point? Well, one, like I said, is to blame the pending, perhaps soon collapse of supply chains on someone other than bankers and politicians.
Yeah.
Like, well, it was going to be fine. It really wasn't anything, but these dumb truckers, they just stopped delivering everything, and they shut down the border between, like, Canada and the U.S., and we've got all these problems because of blue-collar white people who are terrorists.
Which isn't true. I mean,
right, it's
listen,
not true, but that doesn't mean they won't say it.
I deal with truckers and trucking on a daily basis, okay? It's a little tight, but it's fine. Stuff's getting delivered. The problems in the supply chain are not due to a shortage of transportation. They're due to a shortage of the stuff. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But that doesn't mean they won't say it.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Okay. Another reason, and this is a little more esoteric, is to get the continually cucked Canadians to cheer on having foreign leadership. Or like, because
interesting.
They're like, listen, Trudeau's bad, but at least he's a Canadian. And they're like, we want Sikhs or something. Get into power. Like, we want him out and put a woman in there.
Okay, so you think like the white Canadian man is going to be thrown under the bus?
Well, yeah, because he's the villain number one now, and also sort of good. Like, he's the one going along with all this.
Yeah.
Right? They sort of deserve it. I mean, Canada and Canadians are the most pathetic people on the planet. I'm sorry, Canadians, I love you, but you are, and you know it. They don't have like they have.
Now I know some Canadians that have not gone along with any of this stuff. And
there's a few.
There have been especially Christian Canadians who are saying, no, you're not going to shut our churches down. They did a lot of the Christian Canadians. Now, most Christian churches in Canada did shut down, but a few of them.
Not only that, they burned down.
Well, we can talk about that whole
down.
fake mass grave thing if you want to.
Right.
But that was incredible what was done, the blood libel that was put on the Canadian church, and most of them just rolled over and took it.
Right.
I mean, and that's a whole show unto itself.
If they go away, good. Right?
I want for the sake of the faithful Canadians, I don't want that to happen because they'll suffer. They'll suffer, but you know what?
They'll suffer more if they're attached to those.
The Lord is with them. So.
Right. Like, you'll suffer more if you're like Canada is so, and this was a thing Owen Benjamin brought up. He said Canada is so cucked that they spend their whole life complaining about quote unquote First Nations people and how awful they were treated. He was like, oh, you mean like how they were put in schools and told to hate themselves because of their skin, and if they didn't adopt this new culture, they were bad and racist.
Yeah.
And how they were constantly propagandized to not have children, so they went away. You mean like that? It's like, that's you, dummy.
Said. Yeah, that is you guys. Yeah.
It's you, dummy. And I mean, the word, you know where the word racist originally started?
No.
This is true. It was an American Union general who used it about Native Americans when they didn't want to be brought into white culture and replaced. That's the first usage of the term racist. When the Native Americans in the Midwest, like in the Dakotas, they were trying to get them into quote unquote white schools and to adopt white lifestyles and to intermarry with white people, and they said, no, we're actually a people group and we want to maintain our lifestyle. He went, you are racist. That's the first, and it's still used that way. That's all it is.
Well,
And
it's
the
only used against
Canadians-
white people that way.
Right. They just use it against different groups. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
The Canadians are so cucked that they will lose their country for fear of being called a word.
Yeah, it's true.
And so go away. Right? It's like it's deserving.
Yeah,
Like,
you're right. Like a people that is so afraid of being called racist that they let themselves be totally trampled doesn't deserve a country.
right.
I mean, they don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They don't. And Canadians don't. And a lot of Americans don't. America is more diverse in that regard, but still has a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And so, so what they do then is instead of like standing up for themselves, they say, we're going to have a rave in Ottawa. It's going to fix it. We're going to be good now. We're going to be good. But like, guys, freedom is actually really valuable. And so therefore it's really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get to purchase it just by having a rave in the winter.
Well,
That's not
for
enough.
most people, it's other people are having a rave in the winter.
That's true,
There is a mind control component to this, that if you believe that other people are doing the standing up for you, you won't do it yourself.
Right. Well, that's a big part of it too. But like, just standing on the side of the road and clapping at semi trucks driving by.
Yeah.
That's not going to get you to be freed. That's the behavior of a slave.
The real standing up is refusing to participate or obey, no matter what it costs you.
Correct.
Yes.
And they did not do that. They bowed down to every single edict and dictate that ever came.
Most of them.
And now,
most of them. I stand the tiny minority of faithful Canadians that have a backbone.
they can move to Alaska and we'll accept them.
You can move to my house. Come on.
Right. The rest of them must be thrown into the ocean and killed by narwhals. Or whatever happens up there. And none of it.
It's
Right?
a really funny mental picture.
Well, that's what will happen. And so they didn't do it. They just capitulated every time over and over again to everything that's ever been done to them. And now they're getting a little like nervous about it. And they think, well, someone else will save me. I will clap on the side of the road for the truckers and this will be enough. Right. But think about it, guys. The Great Reset thing has been planned for like decades. There's been a global effort, like the fact that like all the Western leaders use the phrase "build back better"
Yeah.
was not a coincidence.
Yeah, they all use it. It's weird.
Do you think that they did not anticipate a protest? Do you think they did not anticipate ways to deal with a protest, how to dissipate that energy? Do you think they did not consider this at all? You're not going to dissuade them from their 30 to 20 year plan funded by everything, by sitting in Ottawa and honking. You're just not. It's not going to work.
And a lot of the people that are up there protesting, they are fully vaccinated. Like they fully submitted to everything.
Right.
But this is their like symbolic taking a stand against the government so that they can they don't feel totally broken inside. I mean, I think that is probably a component to this. That's really what most protesting just generally is. Just it's symbolic so you can get it out of your system and you don't feel like you have to stand when you're alone. You know?
Right.
Because that's the hard part is taking a stand when you're alone and when nobody's with you and when everybody around you is saying, no, just submit. It's the right thing to do, Romans 13 or whatever stupid stuff they say about this shots now.
Right.
That's the hard part. It's easy to stand up when you're at a freedom rave. Yeah.
Right. And so these people couldn't stand up to a grocery store person that said, put on a mask.
Yeah.
And so now they think, well, I'll just get in a big group and be annoying. And that's how I'm going to get my freedom back. Like, no, you don't deserve it. It's not going to happen because you didn't deserve it. See? And this is why I'm sort of like, I get the impulse, but like, this is not This is going to accomplish as much for you as the Black Lives Matter protest did, I think, which is that now there's more black people dying and the same amount going to jail. Nothing happened.
Well, it's funny. They were, it seemed like they were awarded some victories earlier on, like last week, because the governments of Alberta and Saskatchewan, announced that they were pulling back restrictions. But then they kind of got into the details and was like, oh, they're not really. I mean, they're pulling back a few, but like for masks on kids and stuff. But the national restrictions that's not going away, and the truckers still have to get vaccinated, and like the big key points as far as when the rubber meets the road, not a lot has changed, but it's like they wanted to give them some symbolic victories to make them feel good.
Right, because they were doing a symbolic protest, and so you get a symbolic victory.
Yeah.
That's what it is, right? Again, freedom is expensive, and you don't get to purchase it over a weekend for being annoying and honking. You have to actually live that way, and most people, especially in Canada, are not willing to do that, and so they don't get it. And that doesn't mean you go be violent or anything. That doesn't mean that at all. It's just, okay, I hear you saying, but. Okay, well, here's what I think the real reason for this, that they would stage this protest is. And it goes back to what I said before, and say over and over in the show, your consent is important and they always have to tell you. So by holding this rally, by everyone agree to it, what are you doing? By asking for your freedom, are you not implicitly admitting and consenting, do you see how it works, that they're the ones that can give it to you? By asking for your freedom, you're consenting to the idea that they have the authority to dole out your freedom to you if they want to. You're in essence, and think about it, because this is what you're doing, you're admitting that they are your master and you are their slave. You're downgrading your rights into privileges, and you consented to it because you said you took away our rights, give them back. But they didn't take away our rights. But see, Sumo, I hear you saying, Sumo. What choice do we have? They're making us wear masks and jab ourselves with needles, but no, they aren't. Yes, they are. No, they aren't. Right? But yes, they are. No, they aren't. But I really want to go honk a horn and have sex with Chris Sky. I know you want to go have sex with Chris Sky in Canada. Calm down. Right? I know it sounds crazy, right? What I'm about to go into sounds a little unbelievable. But I'm simply reporting you the truth as I can perceive it. And that is here's the truth, I think. Literally, in some form or fashion, you have consented to almost everything that's ever happened to you in your life. And I say almost, I think there are exceptions, but in general, right? You never had to wear a mask, never one time. You never had to be injected with anything, never one time. This is where, what I'm about to say, the police that listen to the show and the lawyers that listen to our show are going to be like, nonsense, but what I'm about to say. But, however, I know too many people for whom this has worked, right? And again, I hear all the policemen and all the lawyers going, Mah! Okay, just listen. Mandates are actually not laws. I know. The distinction has been blurred, but it's a different word for a reason. Language is actually important. It's been blurred on purpose and through ignorance, to the point where even people in law enforcement and attorneys don't understand. But if you push it, it does work, right? And so this is the thing, like here, again, if I am seeing further like a Galileo or whoever, because I stand on the shoulders of giants, the truther community has its own sort of informal peer review process where we're all putting out information and theories and talking to each other and criticizing them and back and forth or enhancing the others' theories in some ways. So I say that to avoid taking full credit for any of the following out of fairness. Right, I'm synthesizing a lot of what other people have done, adding my own. Just off the top of my head, it's guys like Matt from Quantum, Paul of Pockets, Owen Benjamin does a lot, Tom Barnett, Crow 777. Crow's a big one. Guys, if you're not listening to those people, especially like Crow 777, Crow has done some of the most amazing work on how consent-based slavery works. It's been fascinating. So I know this sounds crazy, right? I get that it sounds, but again, it does work, right? And listen, here's how you be a mystic, actually. This is a Christian mystic anyway. Here's the trick. Are you ready? Okay. Take your Bible, right? Whatever, you got one. Here's your default assumption. Everything in here is true all the time. That's how you start on the mystic path. Everything in here is true all the time. Everything all the time. So now you become a mystic when you're trying to square that circle. When apparently opposite things are both true. When things that seem to defy your experience and reason are true. And you say, how can this be? And as you work that out, you begin to see the fabric of reality. That's sort of the purpose of why the Bible is there, is to help you do that. And everything I talk about on the show is from that basic premise. Like, it's not the stuff of the Bible isn't true some of the time. Parts of it aren't true in one scenario and other parts in other scenarios. That's Satanism. It's like, oh, that's just because once you adopt that, you can be like, oh, well, right now that part doesn't apply. You just get to pick and choose what happens. It's just whatever, right? It's not time or location or scale dependent. Like, in every scale and existence of space, in every point in time, under every circumstance, all of it's true all the time. Okay, then you go have fun. Now you figure out how the world works. Okay, so a fun passage to work through in regards to what's going on in the world now, if you accept that premise, which honestly, if you do, leads you to what I'm going to talk about, which is vaguely a sovereign citizen position. Not in the dumb way, but it's like 1 Peter 2, right? It says, be subject to the Lord, for the Lord's sake, to every human institution, whether it be the emperor as supreme or to governors as sent by him to punish those who do evil and praise those who do good. For this is the will of God, that by doing good you should put to silence the ignorance of the foolish people. Live as people who are free, not using your freedoms as a cover-up for evil, but living as servants of God. Honor everyone, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the emperor. Okay, so that's a fun one to work through, given the 20th and 21st century, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Would this apply to, say, Hitler? What if you were German in 1942? Should you use this passage to justify murdering Jews? What about in, say, today America, when the government asks you to do things you should not?
Or what if your government is overthrown by a psychotic junta? Are you to submit to the psychotic junta, or you try to reestablish the prior legal government? Right. Yeah, there's a lot of hard questions come out of that.
Well, yeah, exactly. And this working them out is how you gain wisdom, I believe. So is God asking you to do just whatever an evil person says because he happens to get elected? Is God that stupid? Is God that unjust? Is Peter himself, who wrote this, just naive and of like how the world works? And of course, what about his own lived example of his life? Is he being a hypocrite? He disobeyed authorities fairly frequently.
The disciples illegally carried concealed weapons against Roman law at Jesus' instruction.
And so did Paul. Have they forgotten their own actions? No, and no, I think. So I submit to you, and here's where we get a bit weird, but I think this is actually, if you noodle it for a while, there has never actually, in history, been a law anywhere that says you have to do evil things ever.
Interesting.
I know that sounds crazy, but that doesn't mean that Satan hasn't tried to extremely blur the line between what's coming from him and his minions and what's coming from the authority. Definitely does. And he blurs it very well sometimes. But actually, if you drill down, act according to your conscience, your honest, non-ego driven conscience, I think the law is actually always on your side. Which is why I'm not for like overthrowing the government or whatever. For example, the government says to businesses, look, you must require a mask for all the people in your store. Now, this is a mandate. A mandate is not a law. I know it seems like it. A lot of people think it is. Like I said, it's a different word for a reason. If you challenge it and the people that do, it doesn't hold. By challenge it, I don't mean yell and scream at people and threaten police officers. I mean, like, very reasonably, through the legal system as necessary, assert your rights. So what happens is, in all the cases I've looked at, people go, I actually don't have to do that. This is my private property. There is no actual law passed by a legislator that says that I have to make people. Yes, you do. and then they come and try to shut down the store. And then what happens, if you do it properly, send whoever shut you down a letter, an affidavit, and said, here's, just to give them notice, just because this is important. Like, I believe you're violating my rights for these reasons. Please, whatever. If they don't respond, then you can issue a civil suit against them. And they go to court. And then what happens is the courts actually make judgments based on the laws passed by the legislature. They don't, the mandates are not in the law book. They're not.
Yeah.
Right? And so they go through and they're like, well, this actually isn't in the book, though, where you have the authority to do this. And then they stop. That has happened. Like, there were gyms. There's one gym I followed on Instagram heavily in Massachusetts, like in downtown, that never closed. The police harassed them. They said, they came and arrested them one time. They let him go, of course, because they had to, because he hadn't broken any law. He filed some affidavits. He went to court. He said, listen, where is it in the law book that I have to do this? And it's not there. And so he stayed open.
Yeah.
And he prospered. And just like Crow had on his show the other day, Crow 777, a woman who, I believe she's in Chicago or maybe Boston, one of these big cities. It's sort of like over there. And her child is 7 years old and does not wear a mask to the public school. Everyone else does. Because she went to the trouble. She sat down. She wrote out a notice, sent it to the school board, and said, look, I am she had a bullet point list. She said, 1, I am not contracting with the school to provide medical services for my child. No one has ever consented to that. 2, you do not have any legal authority to act as to act with medical discretion. 3, there's nowhere in the law books that says you can do this. 4, I believe it's an unreasonable, all these things. She puts them on a bulleted list, sends it to them. The school board doesn't answer her because they don't have a legal requirement to. But at least then when you get to court, you can say, I told them.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's an important point, just aside, that a mask is a medical intervention.
Right. Exactly. 100%
and people can't force you to use medical interventions.
Correct. And especially take a vaccine. That's even way more.
Yeah. That's one you can't take off.
And what happens is the school says, well, it's our school policy. And she said, does your school policy trump the written laws of the state? And they say, because that's a bind. Because if they say yes, they've incriminated themselves.
Yeah.
So most of the time it ends right there. If they push it more, then the judge is like, well, listen, because like you can have a company policy that doesn't conflict with the laws of the, like McDonald's can ask you to wear a brown uniform if you work at McDonald's. That's fine. That's not against. McDonald's can't say it's our company policy that you go rob a bank.
Yeah.
And you say, well, I have to go rob the bank. It's company policy. Like, no, that's against the laws. Right? And they can't say, and with regard to your own personal body, they can't be like, okay, now go work the air fryer, but we're not going to give you that scoop. You got to do it with your hands. They were trying to save money on the scoops. Like, but that's unreasonable. My hands will be melted. And I'm like, I don't care. It's company policy. They can't do that. It's against the law. Right? And so you go there and you say, well, it's our company policy. And then you're like, well, but actually your company policy does not trump this other thing.
Right.
And they go, yeah,
and
you're right.
The other thing is that you have to have informed consent for medical stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they go, well, but it's a mandate. And they says, but where is it actually in the law books? And the judge is like, well, I guess you're right. It's not actually in the law books. And that's how it because a mandate exists and it has a very technical legal definition. And it's something that if I remember correctly, the courts can mandate that lower courts operate in some way or give them some information. It also can be a government suggestion of what can happen, which is I think if you go through the etymology of mandate, it is a suggestion. It's like hand, giving from the hand or something like that. Like it's like, here's a thing you might want but it's not like, it has no force of law. Actually, now people think it does, and then that makes them act according to it, and that's Satan's blurring the lines. But if you just stood up and said, now, of course, like if you're shopping at a store, right, and they want you to, they don't have to do business with you. They can sort of define some of the terms of your business transaction, like no shares, no shares, no shirt, no shoes, no problem, right? No service. You can you can be like, well, unless you wear a silly hat, we don't want to do business with you. And they can sort of do that, and that's fine. It's their business. But you just say, okay, well, going elsewhere then. That's all anyone had to do ever was say, hey, no thank you. I don't want to do that.
I walked out of so many businesses for them trying to make me wear a mask. I mean, for a while there, I was doing it like every week. Somewhere, somebody would take a hard line and I'd just walk out. And that's what you have to do.
Right. And so
that's the cost.
But see, here's the thing, like because people be like, but I saw them arrest people for masks. It's like, yeah, sometimes the cops did technically illegally arrest people because, like I said, when it got to the courts. But
you're not going to prison for it. You're not even going to get fined, probably. I mean,
in fact, if they do, you can sue the cops for criminal like you illegally arrested me because the mandate I'm allowed to be in public. Now where you can't do is if like you're at an Aldi's and the Aldi's doesn't want you there, then you're trespassing.
Right. If they ask you to leave, you do have to leave. I mean,
right, because it's their thing. But in public property, in public grounds, no, and in your private grounds, but you don't have to, right? And so, like a school is public property. It's the public school district. It's not like they can't do. They may think they can, but if you actually challenge it, and you can do all this through a very, like the government is not actually bad. The government is there. It protects your rights, and you can use it. You can use that legal system to your advantage. It's just people don't, and they are afraid, and they just act out of fear. And so so I think what Peter was saying is correct. Like, because he pairs that with live as people who are free, not using your freedom as a cover up for evil. He knows what he's talking about. Like, it's all true all the time. Like, so the actual, like, Rome never had on the books that you had to, like, murder people. Like, it wasn't a law that you had to do things evil. Right? Now, they would try to blur the lines about what was legal, just like they always do. But this is why Paul had such great effect in the court system when he went. He's like, listen, I didn't break any laws. And they would always, and then he'd be in and out all the time. But he wasn't breaking any laws.
Yeah, he's shrewd as a serpent and innocent as a dove.
Right, exactly.
The perfect picture of that.
Exactly, because if you believe that God actually sets up the authorities, then you must believe that they are just in some way. And that now the people that are running them may be corrupt or whatever, and that's fine. But if you actually work the mechanics of the system, it will work out for you if you're doing the right thing. And that is good, right? And so what the Canadians are doing, instead of that, they're trying an extra legal means of basically throwing a big rave and in the process of doing that, they're saying our rights do come from you. They're not from God. They're like, you, Trudeau, can give us our rights at any reason. Your mandates are laws, and we believe it. And they're just bowing down, right? And people, and like again, I said, people bring this up, and people are like, oh, the sovereign citizens are crazy. A lot of them are. A lot of them think that what it means is you can say, I'm no longer in society and I don't have to listen to anything. But you can do that if you just go off in the woods, right? But the minute you try to engage in like commerce and stuff, then you're back in that world of like, well, but there's rules for interacting with other human beings.
Right. Which isn't a bad thing. I mean, it's a good thing.
Which isn't a bad thing, right? There should be. And so those things, so a lot of those people are like, well, I wrote an affidavit and that says I didn't have to drive the speed limit. And so then they go 150 miles an hour through a subdivision and kill someone. And they're like, I'm sovereign citizen. Like, no, that's not how it works. You people are crazy. But that's also not what the original sovereign citizens and the people that practice that are saying. In fact, guys, some of them don't even ever pay taxes. Because I know that sounds, but it's true. Like there's one fellow I know of, and he got in a fight with the IRS, and he said, "But how did you define me as a taxpayer, though?" That was like, he didn't get into all the weeds. He was like, "But am I a taxpayer?" And like, that's not a road I want to fight.
Yeah.
But if you do, you can, and people have, and because he was like, "Listen, I read the law here, and it talks about like corporations and things." He said, "I'm not any of those things. I'm not a person. I'm a living man." He's like, "But what is a person though?" And you drill down to the thing, and it actually, in the legal dictionary, a person is defined as some weird corporate body. They're like, it's strange.
Okay.
Like, because like we went through this in the Sovereign Citizen show, but the definition of a person in the actual laws is a bit strange, and it's hard to actually pin it on like a living man or woman unless you incriminate yourself to it by agreeing that that's what you are. This is what they believe, happens, is that everything you do, like when this is why a lot of them pick new names, because they're like, well, the name you gave me on my birth certificate is not actually who I am. I don't agree that I'm that legal entity. Because when you're born and given a birth certificate, a legal entity is created that stands for you. And it's your name and it's all this stuff, and that's your symbol in the system. But if you're like, well, but I'm not actually that though. Like that's why the judge at court cases will ask you like, and this is who you are or whatever, they'll be like, and Mrs. Smith or whatever, I'm like, yes, that's consenting that you are that legal entity. And then when they get there, they're like, but no, that's not me. And then the judge is like, oh, this is interesting. Are you not this person? Like, I'm not actually that legal entity or whatever. And that causes a big issue. And I know it sounds stupid. I get it. But like, you are consenting to be under the things that are not God's law when you... It's strange how it works, but that does seem to be a thing that actually happens. And so, like, it does work, because like people in Africa just didn't do the mandates. They just didn't.
Yeah, that's true.
Lots of Muslim countries didn't do any of it either. Their leaders made mandates, and they were just like, hey, no thanks.
The entire Orthodox Jewish community in New York just said, nah, not getting them.
Exactly.
Has anything happened to them? No.
Nothing. Because they're not laws. It's not true. Right? But all the cut Christians who have zero sense of their own self-worth as a child of God just lined up in mass like farm animals to be injected in corrals. And none of them did any of that. And so if they go away, good. If they go away, good, because you don't. All they had to do was go, no, thank you. I'll simply go elsewhere. But they decided that what was best was to stand on the highway and clap for trucks and be really annoying in the middle of the night and have a rave. And if it was terrorism and harassment when BLM did it, it's the same when you do it. You can't have a double, because literally all you had to do was say, no, thank you. If it's a requirement to interact with business on this property, then I'll just go somewhere else. Thank you. And if like 10% of people had done that, none of this would have gone anywhere. But
I tell you what, I know so many people that, and many of them are listeners to this show, that took that approach, and they faced imminent job loss. They thought, oh, I'm totally going to lose my job, but I can't, I'm not free in my conscience to consent to this. It would be wrong for me to take the shot. And just as an aside, if you think that the shot is good and you want it, go nuts. I'm not saying that nobody should get vaccinated. I'm saying that if it violates your conscience to get vaccinated, you shouldn't violate your conscience.
Right.
But anyway, I know so many people who took a stand and said no thanks, just like you said. They're not going out, they're not waving signs, they're not pitching a big fit, they're not demanding that the government give them rights, because they said, I have rights, they're granted to me by God, and I'm going to be in full possession of them no matter what it costs me. And you know what? Most of them didn't end up losing their jobs. Most of them are still employed just fine, even though there were threats. Some of them had deadlines. If you don't do it by this date, you are losing your job. We are going to fire you. And it didn't happen. It never happened.
It's all just
people.
bullying.
I know people that work in the medical industry, nurses and like surgical people, people that work in like big high profile quasi-governmental giant industrial things that have a lot of interaction with government and regulation and all that kind of stuff. I mean, these aren't like work from home computer nerds like me. These are guys that are actually like on the front lines of the enforcement of this thing, and they stood their ground and they were brave, and they didn't have to take them, and they didn't lose their job either. And I know you guys are listening, and I think about you guys a lot, and I'm very proud of you. Good job.
Yeah, me too. And those that did lose their jobs, if you can sue them about that.
Yeah.
Because it's wrongful termination.
You can.
Actually look into that.
You can sue them.
100% you can. And so, the reason that a lot of them didn't lose their jobs because they talked to their lawyers and was like, actually, that would be wrong. And that would be a problem.
Yeah.
Because they decided to sue.
Yeah. But they'll push you all the way to the edge. Yeah. They'll push you all the way to the edge to see if you'll stand or if you'll voluntarily get it. You're right. This is voluntary. I've seen it. I've seen it too many times to believe otherwise.
Yeah, it's all everything evil is always voluntary. Because there's no law to do evil. Never has been. Now they can try to bully you and make you think there is and do all these things, but that's not how it works. Right? And so just if you're at the trucker protest, I recommend that you leave now, personally, because there will be a response, and it will be a perfectly legal and valid thing to be like, look, you've laid siege to a city, and so now we're arresting you. Right? because you don't have to do, that's not how you get your rights anyway. It doesn't work like that. If you're doing that, you're just, and I get the emotion, I get that people have been put through a lot, I get that it's difficult to wake up every day and deal with a brand new psyop. I understand. But just be careful. Things are not what you think they are.
It's highly likely that the people there are being led into a trap. I mean, we've already seen evidence that the trap is being set. There are feds out there trying to provoke some sort of crazy thing to justify what the government has already decided to do, which is to come in with a very heavy hand.
Whether or not it was started as a trap, I don't know. I think there's evidence that maybe it was, but I'm not sure. But it will turn into that.
It's going to end as a trap. Yeah.
It's going to, definitely. So just stop being stupid and just try to not be Canadian anymore, I guess.
And it's like, if you violated your conscience, like, look, I violated my conscience at the beginning of this thing in 2019 in a few ways. And you know what I did? I repented of it. I repented to God and to the people around me that were affected by my mistakes.
Right.
And that's how you get freedom. So if you've done something,
your kids never had to wear a mask in public school. Never.
Yeah. So if you've done something, if you've compromised, if you made your kid wear a mask and you feel bad about it and you don't know what to do, just repent of it.
Right.
You violated your conscience. That's de facto wrong and a sin.
Everyone has
repent
done
of it. Apologize, repent to God and apologize to your kids and say and then you resolve as a family, we're never doing this again.
Right.
That's how you fix it. That's how you get your freedom back.
Exactly. And that's it's so simple, but also so daunting at the same time.
Oh, it's terrible. It's a horrible thing to realize and to go through. It's very hard, but there's real freedom at the end of it. There really is.
And there have been a couple people, they got the whole school district to not do masking because they just went there and said, listen, if you actually were to do this, you'd be breaking 3 or 4 laws. Here they are. And I will bring a criminal suit against you personally.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, well, I don't want that. So I'll just stop. And then it goes away. But see, you can actually, the American system does work for you. You just have to actually use it. And it is annoying. Like, it's an inconvenience to file suits and go through courts and stuff.
Yeah, you actually have to be willing to do research you know.
It's not even that much research.
Yeah.
But it is annoying.
Well, you have
right?
to you actually have to think for yourself too, which is hard.
Yeah.
And requires courage, because it's a lot easier and requires no courage to let the mob think for you. And the mob is saying, no, there's no legal recourse. You can't do anything about this. You might as well just give in, or they're going to take everything away from you. That's what
right,
what
the
mob
psyops.
says.
That's one of Satan's tricks. It's like, there is no legal recourse. It's just, you got to do what I say.
But almost everybody I know that stood up, like we're talking about, succeeded.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
So, so just be careful with the protest. There's some suspicious things to it. I don't know. Maybe it's genuine, but they're going to try and get you anyway.
Yeah.
So, and by the time this airs, maybe everyone there will have already been got. Who knows?
I hope not. I hope
maybe they'll dissipate and be peaceful. I don't know.
I hope they outsmart them. I really do. Like, if you're going to stay, be smart. Like, you're justified. Your feelings are justified. What they've done to you is horrible. Maybe the way to freedom is first repentance and then refusing to participate when you're alone. Maybe that's what you guys need to do.
And then, like, I don't know. I guess I was trying to think of, like, you were saying be smart about it, and I was trying to think, is that possible for a Canadian?
I know some smart Canadians. I know and love some very smart Canadians.
I don't. I'm sure there are a couple.
There are. I can vouch for them.
All the ones I've ever known, they're just up there talking about moose.
You haven't spent as much time with Canadians as I have.
Huh?
You haven't spent as much time with Canadians as I have.
But how often do they bring up moose, though? Like every other sentence. Oh, it's a moose. It's like a moose.
Moose and snow.
It's a moose.
Yeah, it's syrup. Yeah.
So moose and maple syrup and hockey, which isn't even real.
Is hockey a psyop?
Hockey's just such a silly. It's such an contrived sport. You got sticks. What are you doing?
Shout out to my strong minority of Canadians. Love you guys. Sorry about your Canadian bros up there.
I think it's just too cold for them to think clearly.
Maybe.
Targets up here, we just had something go right over the top of us that, I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast and went right over the top of us.